Yeah, I want to discuss what your beliefs about meditation are and what your experiences have been. And yeah, talk about the common misconceptions about meditation.
Yeah, so like the benefits of meditation, and I actually don't understand what that is. I've actually tried meditation, guided meditation. I guess it was kind of nice, but I don't quite know. Um, I don't know that it would take a while in order to get to a place where it's beneficial. Could be a lot of things, but I tried it. I guess it was kind of nice, but I wouldn't say that that I felt like it was like a mandatory thing. So I just couldn't keep it up. Maybe it's one of those things where I have to keep doing it for a while in order to see the effects. But I've never tried it. So, I mean, I'm hoping this conversation is about one, the misconceptions around it, and two, what meditation's all about for my benefit. So,
So let's
um,
start with the main misconception about like when we are talking about meditation, we are talking about as if it's one thing, right?
mhm.
We're just saying meditation, and as if there's only one type of doing meditation, which is a misconception. I think we can define meditation as something that is intentionally training our mind to function in a certain way. And we are, with different meditations, train the mind for different things, right? Depending on what type of meditation you're practicing, what you're going to experience is going to be completely different. And the benefits of it will be different. So, so commonly people think about like meditation is something you need to just sit straight and start breathing and do what? What do you, for example, what's your conception about like what meditation looks like? What does one do?
I mean, if you just do Google image search, that's the idea of what people think meditation is. People closing their eyes, breathing slowly, clearing their mind, and just breathing, being very, very present. I mean, that's what people. Yeah, that's just what are my thoughts on meditation is.
And I think, yes, that's another type misconception that meditating is just sitting down and clearing your mind.
Mhm.
So it is true that as a benefit of meditation, you will have a clarity. I think that's more of a consequence than it is what you do, right? You cannot just sit down and wish away the thoughts go away, like I reach clarity. How do you do that? And I feel a lot of people get super frustrated because they feel like I'm just going to sit down and I'm going to clear out my thoughts. Does it happen? Not really. Like that's not how the brain works. Like it doesn't. You cannot just say, "Okay, I'm not going to think anything." That just they go away, right? And it's frustrating because of that. When you expect that, like, how do you clear your mind? First of all, what do you do? That part of is the meditation, right? And
Right.
that's more of a consequence that you would reach some form of clarity in your mind. So again, there are different techniques to reach that clarity at certain in certain meditation. And another misconception that it's something you sit down, start meditating, and then you're going to be relaxed. Again, relaxation can be the result of certain types of meditation, and not necessarily for other types of meditation. For example, mindfulness meditation is not about getting to a relaxed space. It's more about how you relate to the experience. And if you're talking about mindful emotions, when you are experiencing stress or distress or a negative emotion, it's your ability to sit down with it and actually become aware of that emotion or
Right.
distress, right? Rather than running away. You're not trying to relax, get rid of that
Mhm.
distress. You're actually paying attention to it. So they, for example, they use it for chronic pain management. And you would think the last thing people with chronic pain want to do is pay attention to their pain, right? It's
Mhm.
about like developing that quality of not running away from that pain. Actually, that's what we're trying to achieve in terms of the mindfulness approach. It's more about being able to be present with what's going on in ourselves and letting it go, not attaching to that or not trying to avoid that. So it's a different relationship to the experience. So if you have the idea of all types of meditation, I'm going to sit down and it's going to relax me. I think it's an unhealthy expectation, and it frustrates a lot of people because that's not going to happen right away. However, if you practice meditation for a while, yes, you will have that body relaxation response again as a consequence. But that's more of the consequence of what we are doing rather than what we are doing in that moment. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah. Yeah. So in other words, you're focusing on other things as opposed to, yeah.
Yeah.
Actually.
And one way relaxation is achieved during meditation. Okay, let's talk about the different types of meditation.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few main types. That's one type of meditation is the type of meditation that trains our focus, attention. So it's our ability to bring our attention back to this point of whatever paying attention to, right?
Yeah.
Our mind wanders away and we bring it back. The way I started meditating was kind of a attention training meditation, which I picked my favorite fruit, orange. I would think about an orange. I would see an orange in front of my eye, and then my mind would wander away, and I would bring it back to an image of an orange. Mm-hmm. And like I would find my mind going away and thinking about everything else, of course, in a little bit. I would bring it back to the orange. So here, the practice is not being fully focused on the orange. The practice here is that bringing back, using the intention of like governing my attention. I realize my focus has shifted onto something, and I practice bringing it back. Or if I do this enough time, so I train my faculty to focus on things better. Right? And I believe for my clients, the most important resource they have is not time, but their focus.
Right. I've heard that.
Focus is, at this point in time, focus is the, one thing that we don't have enough because of the technology, the constant stimulation really messes up our ability to stay focused on task and focus on ideas to build it enough. So I think that's a very valuable way of meditating. And when that happens, when you are bringing your thoughts back onto one point, what it also does is your mind doesn't have time to ruminate and create stories and to stress over things. Right? All of a sudden, all these anxiety-provoking thoughts or like the racing mind and everything goes away if you practice for a while. And it's a relaxing state because if you're in the present, you're just focusing on an orange, you're not worried about many things, right? It's a relaxing thing in that sense because you don't have mental space to be worrying about stuff if you can keep your focus on something. And another way of doing it is, like, for example, mantras and chants and stuff like that. By repeating the same word, if you're doing a mantra meditation, you keep saying the same thing, or you keep saying like Om. You may have heard of it.
I have.
Explanation. So if you keep repeating those things, what happens is that they put you into a mild trance. And if you change your state of consciousness and go to a mild trance, guess what? You're in this different kind of consciousness where you feel relaxed, you feel like come from it, like some people feel oneness. So there's something pleasant about being in trance, right? So a lot of people find relaxation because by repeating the same words or same things, or sometimes like in some spiritual traditions, it's movement. Like they will just do this rocking motion, right and left and right, and then they will say one word and do this for a while. You'll be in trance. And once you're in trance, you feel good, you're relaxed, and when you come out of trance, you feel completely different. So, but again, it's more like the consequence. But the reason we are doing it is we are trying to improve some faculty. So it's a mental training we put ourselves into. And that's one type of meditation, which we call concentrative meditation, when you're concentrating on one thing.
Yeah.
You're trying to keep your mind on thing. And there is this open focus meditation, which in concentrated meditation, you're narrowing your attention to one thing. It's like a narrowing process. And with the open one, you do the opposite. So you're expanding your attention to capture as much as you can. So in mindfulness meditation, for example, your job is to actually absorb everything that is coming to you. If you're paying attention, if it's in your body, what is happening in your body, you open your attention to perceive the physiological sensations. And if we are talking about mindfulness of interactions, I'm opening my attention to capture everything that you are telling me, for example, right now, if I'm in a conversation with you. So one is narrowing down attention, the other is expanding the attention. So they have very different functions because of that. So in a mindfulness meditation, my goal is to create a relationship with the experience I have, to become aware of that experience for what it is and accept it as is without trying to change it, without trying to push it away or clinging to it. Like, for example, in discomfort, our nature is to say, no, I don't want this. Let me go do something else. Like, I don't want to feel this. Yeah. And in mindfulness meditation, you're not having that preference of I want this, I don't want this type of thing. Oh, like this is happening right now. Let me pay attention to it.
Right.
Which develops our awareness and emotional intelligence and has tremendous effect for emotional well-being, actually. So in that sense, relaxation, yeah, sometimes you may have relaxation as a result of meditation, but sometimes it's going to be sitting with discomfort. And very relaxing if you're doing that kind of meditation.
Now, question. So going back to the mindfulness one and one where you're more focused, when you're doing mindful, I think I've been guided mindful meditation when they say, I think it said, feel your feet up to your knees up to your hips and on, or feel your breathing. Is that mindful meditation? Because you're focusing on one thing at a time.
That's body scan meditation,
right? Okay.
Which you are increasing your ability to pay attention to the physical sensation that are arising in your body, and you do it in different parts of body so that you're trying to develop that awareness of the sensations in every part of your body. Some people only pay attention to certain parts.
Yeah.
And body scan helps us to develop that awareness of, which we call interoception. Like perception is when we are like using our five senses to understand the external world. And there are sensations that is coming from our internal world, physiological sensations. And this is developing awareness of those sensations. And you may say, like, why is it even important to do that? Like, why do I need to pay attention to the sensations in my foot?
Yeah.
Right. And I think that's the base of emotional intelligence, because yes, we want to be aware where our body is physically, right? We talk so much about how our physiological state, nervous system state, governs everything else about us. To be able to know what state I'm in, I need to be able to know what physiological sensations I have in my body. If I cut that off and I'm not paying attention, I'm not going to know what state, nervous system state I'm going to be in. And I'm not going to really know what I'm feeling. Because emotions, by definition, are physiological. If there is no physiological change in your body, it means that you don't have that emotion. Does that make sense? So it's not something that is only in your thoughts. It has to be in your body for us to be calling that an emotion. So that's necessary part of emotional intelligence.
Got it. Okay, that makes sense. That's probably why you hear a lot of psychologists that say that you may think one thing, but your body thinks the other. And so you're talking about emotional, which is physiological. That makes sense. So the idea is that it helps you relax, ultimately, both types of meditation, whether you're in focus or whether you're receiving everything. Am I understanding that correctly?
Say it again.
Like the goal of both types of meditation, whether you're focused on one thing or you're receiving everything. I mean, what are the benefits between one or the other? One versus the other.
So I think your ability to focus is fundamental, right? Your ability to govern your focus is fundamental, because think about this as a camera. If you have a camera and you're shooting a movie,
Hmm.
Where your camera is directed determines what the movie is about.
Yeah.
And if you are not the one directing the camera, you'll have a random movie, right? Whatever comes in front of the camera, that's what what you're going to have in front of that camera.
That's right.
Some people live like that. They have a camera, but they are not leading the camera, right? They just like that. There's this wobbly head. It turns wherever. So when there's something like really amazing going on, do they shoot that amazing thing happening next to them? No, because they're not controlling the camera. If camera is looking the other way, they miss this amazing thing happening. Or if there is a risk, if there's a hole on the street, and if the camera is not seeing that, what happens? They're going to fall in the street. It's not going to be there. It's not capturing that risk as well. So if you live your life without governing your attention and where it goes, what happens to you and what your life becomes is more like chance or random. You're not governing. You're not at the driving position. If you govern your attention, then there's a different story. Then you determine what you're going to have in that movie. So it gives us more of a choice, being able to govern your attention. So I think that attention training helped us get better at that, like everything else in life. If you want to be able to, be strong physically, you have to go to the gym or do something to exercise those muscles. You don't expect to be carrying super heavy stuff without having any training, right? It determines your ability to do things. In a similar way, in the mental world, this kind of training determines the ability of what we can achieve. So a lot of people do it in terms of like, relaxation, this is going to help me. But I think there is a longer term benefit of reshaping your brain for higher cognitive ability, first of all, higher choice that you create in your life, and higher well-being, because you can regulate yourself much better when you have that. So I think focus is fundamental. But then when you go to that openness, your ability to understand what's happening inside of you and outside of you, and you can see this is like that level of awareness is also something that helps us create higher quality of life. And not only that, it seems like it has a lot of health benefits, physical benefits as well. Because if you think about it, again, go to our ancestors' time, they lived in a completely different lifestyle. So they spend a lot of time being able to focus on things. Like if they were, for example, hunting, it requires a lot of focus, right?
Right.
You need to be focused on the goal, and you need to have this open awareness so that they wouldn't miss the little signs of, like if they are foraging or hunting, or if they are trying to stay away from predators. That level of mindfulness was super important. So it was part of life. They didn't need to sit down and practice. Like they didn't need to go to gym because their lifestyle was about that. So this is how human beings naturally perform. Now fast forward to our time, we have this problem and we have to sit down and meditate, I think, more because we live differently and our lifestyle doesn't require that from us. But because of that, like we are, evolved for that. We function better when we go back to that and being able to use our attention that way. Otherwise, our mind goes to that default mode network. Right? We discussed in the psychedelics. Do you remember?
Yeah.
There's part of our brain that usually goes when we are not focused on one thing. And the more default network activation you have, the more anxiety we have. We don't really feel great when we are, in that default mode network activation. So we want to decrease that. And psychedelics decrease that activation. Meditation decrease that activation. So we are overusing the default mode network. I think that's one of the problems we have.
I see. So it kind of relaxes that for a bit. So then meditation is about relaxation, or is it not about relaxation?
In my opinion, it's not about relaxation.
Okay.
You can have relaxing effects, yes, especially with some forms, but not necessarily. The value of it the meditation is not in the relaxation. If you get relaxation effects, great, you're benefiting from it. That's one of the benefits, but that's not necessarily the reason that I feel like we should be doing it. Does that make sense?
That
And not
does.
all forms of meditation are gonna give you that. For example, when you're doing a body scan, especially the first time you're doing it, you may not find it very relaxing. You may find it very uncomfortable, not being able to do that, and it's frustrating. And if you come with that idea of, oh, like this is gonna relax me, and you're not relaxing, you're gonna say, this doesn't work. Like I
Right.
think that benefit people are talking about, and then you quit that. Like, no, that's not the reason we are doing that practice, right? But if you think that it's about relaxation, you're gonna quit because you're not gonna find that like
That
that.
makes sense.
You know?
And then, okay, so like what, but the goal is to pretty much minimize the usage of the brain. That's the idea, right? So it's not to relax. It might have relaxing effects, but the ultimate goal is to help with focus, correct? Would you say?
And I wouldn't say usage. We don't decrease the usage. We don't actually do that. We are trying to increase the quality of how we use our brain.
Mm-hmm.
So what we are trying to achieve with meditation is we want to enhance our cognitive abilities, what our brain can achieve,
Mm-hmm.
right? Because we know meditation like improves decision making, clarity, creativity, critical thinking skills. So all our cognitive skills that we really value, especially in terms of performance, gets better as a result of different forms of meditation. Again, different forms have different effects, but and then the second part is the emotional well-being.
Mm-hmm.
Originally, if you come from the Buddhist approach, it's to reduce the suffering, because we see that meditation has, has a lot of emotional well-being consequences. Especially mindfulness meditation has been demonstrated to have like this overall almost effect on the life quality and emotional life. And it's not because you feel good always. That's not what it helps you with. It's not about taking away the negative emotions. It's about relating to our negative emotions in a different way.
Right.
Right? And it's changing the relationship to our experiences, having more kind of even acceptance and awareness of our experiences. So like again, cognitive well-being, emotional well-being, and physical, because we know meditation has a lot of physical health benefits as well. So why should someone do meditation? To like have an overall well-being, like to improve their performance, to feel better, and to be healthier. I think it should be the reason, not necessarily finding relaxation in the moment or finding this in the moment, because like everything else, you cannot expect what you're going to feel. One day you may sit and it may be like, oh my God, this felt so great. This meditation session was great. And the next time you sit, it's super frustrating. You want to quit, like you don't feel good, but it doesn't mean that it's not working. You're still going to the gym. It's like going to the gym. One day you may feel like, oh, I'm really enjoying, and the other day it may feel like, today I don't feel like it. I want to go home. Like that can happen. That's normal, but it's the practice. You still go to the gym and do what you gotta do.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. So with that being the case, it's one of those things, like in my case, I didn't see the benefits of it right away, at least from one or two sessions. It's one of those things where I have, just like going to the gym, I have to keep at it.
Yes. Again, if you did, for example, if you were with a group, if you were doing like a chanting meditation, maybe you would right away feel something, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes you have like an immediate benefit from doing it. Sometimes we don't. But we're doing it for long-term benefit. So we keep at it. It doesn't mean that you're never going to enjoy it. You're never going to find it relaxing. Maybe you did 3 times and the 4th time was going to be, relaxing. So you may have immediate effects, and a lot of people feel some immediate effects, but what we're doing is more for the, I think, long-term effects. And in terms of long-term effects, when we're talking about it, we are rewiring the brain every time we practice it. We are strengthening those parts of the brain that, governs our ability to pay attention and do different kind of that has different kind of functions. So we know that meditation has the ability to have immediate benefits, but also change brain physically. So when you can look at the matter, gray matter in certain areas, you see those areas having more mass. And for that, we're talking about, I think, like minimum 9 months kind of practice, like a year practice, for us to be able to see like a more of a physical change in the brain.
Mm-hmm.
But before that, we still get benefits. But to feel like a completely different person of that different caliber, if we're talking about like your cognitive caliber, how good you can use your mind cognitively, I think it will take some practice, and then we can look at your brain and see that difference in a year.
Okay. I mean, anything that I could do in order to improve my productivity and decision making, I kind of feel like a lot of why I'm procrastinating, and I'm not quite sure. Maybe you could provide some some thoughts onto this. But say, for example, I'm not as productive as I like to be because of small decisions I need to make throughout the day, even small decisions of a task, right? So for one reason or another, there seems to be this mental blocker to even want to open up the email, to even want to read it, to even the moment I want to read it, even thinking how I'm going to reply, even think like just even all those small decisions ends up being like kind of add up, right? I think there are a lot of people who don't think and just do, and they could just go with the motions. They're very applied, and there's some people who just have to who I guess and subconsciously all that they're very aware of, and that's why they tend to procrastinate. That's what I feel, but I don't know if that's the truth. I don't know what exactly is going on anyone else's head. I could just probably only assume that's what's going on, at least in my head, right? Um, so I wonder if there's a way where meditation kind of clears that. You keep what the task is at hand very, very short. You're very short-sighted at the task at hand, and you don't need to think very much. Maybe that helps with focus. I'm not quite sure if meditation does that or not.
Yeah,
I'm told that would.
meditation will help again because you're governing your attention. You are going to be better able to, number one, have the clarity to understand the kind of your priorities better.
Mm-hmm.
And when you are working on it, you're going to be less distracted and pulled by other things.
Yeah.
Because the one problem we have, we start doing something and another comes. Like it's kind of, we are in this sleepwalking mode. Like we're automatically doing things, but there is not much intention and control in terms of what we are doing. We're just like pulled from, million different things. And there's like, it almost like creates this lack of internal resource to be there, and then use willpower as well, right? Because you have to stop that being pulled away by different things. And it requires a lot of willpower to do that. But if you've developed the ability to focus on what matters and stay on task with that, then you don't have to be pulled by those. Like, so you're increasing your ability to do that. Noah Yuval Harari, do you know the guy who wrote *Sapiens*, *Homo
Mm-hmm.
Deus*?
Yeah.
So he's amazing. So he wrote these books, and he kind of distills the story of the whole humanity in a book. Like it's such a difficult task to do. Like, how do you distill the history of the world in a book? How do you decide what to put there? How to tie that? Like it's quite an undertaking. And he attributes his ability to doing that to meditation. He meditates 2 hours a day, I think, if I remember correctly. And like he goes away like months at a time for meditation retreats every year. And the reason he says that is because he needs that kind of focus to be able to write these books and do his work. Like if you don't have that level of focus, like how do you distill something to its core, find the essentials and tie it up? And I think for founders, if you're creating a business, it's an amazing ability as well that you really need. How do you find the essentials of your business and really stay focused on that rather than being pulled by every other thing? And that's one of the reasons most people fail, right? They cannot stay on what the essentials are. They get distracted too much in terms of business, not just their daily, task management and stuff like that.
Very interesting. Okay, that's an interesting thing. And then, what about you? Like you personally, when you started meditation, tell me about your story and how that's changed you. I mean, I hear about all these general things, but I'd like to hear specifics.
So I think mindfulness was a life changer for me as a concept. And the first time I actually experienced what mindfulness was not through meditation, like formal practice. It was just a moment when I was in college. I was at this place where we normally have lunch. It overlooks the Bosphorus and there are trees. And then all of a sudden I saw this tree, like one tree that I saw every single day because I lived on campus.
Yeah.
But this time I really saw the tree. Does it make sense? It was not something green on the background that I knew was a tree. I saw it. I experienced and I became aware of it, and I was struck by that moment. That there's like different levels of seeing things. In my head, I saw that tree every single day because that's where I had my lunches.
Right.
That day, I actually saw the tree. I paid attention to it and I understood it as a separate being. And that was like an awakening almost, that I don't really see things fully. And this was before I was even aware of what mindfulness is. I never heard the term. But when I realized there's a training that helps you to do that so that you can see things clearly, and like there's the different level saying, it just like aha, like that, this is what I need to be doing. And they say you teach the best what you need to learn the most. And I felt like I was a super mindless person. And I still have a tendency if I don't keep myself in line. Because like I was always in the ideas world. I was this kid, like I cut myself with a calendar on the hallway, with a calendar that was hanging on the wall. Like, how do you walk? Like, how unaware are you of your surroundings that you cut your hand with something on the wall, right? So, I could go to the same place 10 times, and the 11th time, like with other people, and 11th time, I need to go by myself and I cannot find the place. Because I'm there, but I'm not there. My mind was always somewhere else. I sleepwalked through life. I was lost in the idea world. So I think mindfulness really helped me to be present and like be present to my life, to what's going on inside of me and outside of me. And there is such a beauty in that. I wish upon everyone to be like waking up few moments at least every day, to like waking up from our sleepwalking and see the moment as is and take the moment as is. There's tremendous beauty and benefit into that. So I did different kind of meditation practices. I played with a lot of things. I played with different spiritual traditions. For a while, I trained in a Zen community, Sufi community. I also studied Kabbalah and their forms of doing things. Never became like a full follower in any tradition. For me, it was more of an exploration. So I looked at the scientific methods of doing it, secular methods, and also spiritual methods. I did a 10-day silent vipassana training. That's what you do for 10 days. You're not allowed to do any activity. You're not allowed
that sounds crazy.
Food, right? You can't even do exercise. You cannot even go take a walk in the woods.
Wow.
So you wake up 4:30 in the morning and you start meditating. It's like 11 hours meditation a day.
Crazy.
Yeah, it's interesting. So what you're doing in these endeavors is you're exploring your mind, like you're understanding how your mind works. And the more you look into it, you realize maybe you shouldn't believe everything your mind says. I always talk about the stories that our mind, like we're creating, like I have this kind of awareness because of that meditation, I think, experience, because when you go examine the contents of your mind, you see a circus. And you stop like believing in everything you think because you examined it and you know how that works, right? One day it's going to say that, the other day it's going to say something else. And, like you have to know the tendencies of your mind. And if you don't know, then you're going to be the victim of it. You don't have the judgment. of, like that meta level of understanding, being able to think about how you think.
Yeah, I
So,
see.
yeah. So in meditation, if we narrow it down, there are different forms of meditation, train different things. One of them is attention, our focus. Another one of awareness of our internal environment and external environment. Another one is of the emotions, the relationship with emotions, what we call affect. And there's forms of meditation like loving kindness meditation or gratitude meditation that develops these emotions, develops our ability for appreciation, develops our ability for kindness to other people, to feel connected with others, our ability to feel gratitude. So there's just the meditation methods to cultivate these in us. That's another form.
Did you find these things happen when, again, going back to you personally? I mean, I know you were more mindful ever since you started doing meditation, that these effects started to happen when you started doing meditation?
So again, I don't think because you practice focus, like attention management, it doesn't necessarily give you the ability to be more grateful in your life.
Right.
It's not the same thing, right?
Right. That's fair.
It doesn't increase your interpersonal well-being and relationships. It is because you're present with the people. If I can focus on what you're saying, of course it's going to improve my relationship with you, but may not help me to cultivate these emotions. They
Mm-hmm.
don't have the same exact effects. And I can practice the emotion, cultivate the emotions, and also cultivate the attention, but it doesn't necessarily give me the metacognitive ability, the ability to think about what I think, the ability to develop different perspectives, right? And I think that's needed for the highest cognitive performance, especially for founders.
Mm.
That metacognition is super important. Our ability to think how we think, ability to be aware of what our mind is doing. There's like a second level, we call it cognitive diffusion. When you're fused with your experience, you are the experience. Cognitive diffusion is separating a part of your mind that observes what you're experiencing. So there's a separation of part of your mind as the observer, which I
Mm.
think is super useful for leaders.
Mm.
And necessary, I think, for good leadership.
So would you say, one of the things that people, I think about meditation when you're talking about that, is that we're sitting around and meditating. We don't need to be doing that, right? We could be like lying in our bed and meditating.
Yeah, like you don't have to be sitting upright in the meditative position like everybody thinks about.
Mm-hmm.
There are some reasons to do that. Like if you're kind of like doing also breathing related meditation, if you're sitting upright, it's easier to meditate. And also, if when you're meditating, when it relaxes you, if you're lying down, you're more likely to fall asleep. So you want to prevent that. That's one of the reasons we sit straight. So there's some reasons that people sit straight when doing that. And so
Mm-hmm.
that also, if you're sitting for a long time, 30 minutes, not moving, you don't want to be slouching because it's going to put extra pressure on certain parts. So sitting like that provides a lot of benefits, but doesn't mean that you cannot meditate. Like it has nothing to do with the posture at that moment. Like the posture helps us to keep certain things. But you can do walking meditation, you can do an eating meditation. And that's what I'm really passionate about, is turning real life activities into forms of meditations. For my
Really?
clients, I give this, like I call it mindful shitting. It's a wonderful practice. I'm serious.
Oh,
You
okay.
go to the toilet, that's a wonderful time to like practice the paying attention to the physiological changes, because there's something physiologically happening and there's a dynamic to it. So it's very easy to keep your attention to it.
Right.
You can distract you. If you don't take your phone with you, right?
Mm.
Nobody can distract you, nobody can ask you something. And like there's a very limited time. If you can turn it, just that, into time for developing awareness of your physiological sensations, I think it's
Mm.
wonderful. So you don't need to even, like when people say, that's another misconception about this, like I don't have time. No, you don't need time, you just need to, even if you're not doing formal civic practices, you can turn real life activities into forms of meditation.
Mm-hmm. That's
So
right. Makes
you
sense.
can do it with eating or drinking. You can do, like, you don't have to be long, like the whole time. But even when I'm doing, like, drinking something, the first 2 sips, I can turn it into a mindfulness practice. How would I do that? I
Mm-hmm.
have sparkling water right now, but it's flavored, so I can start with activating all my senses. So I would start with smell and smell how it, okay, how it smells rather than automatically chugging it. And then I can look at it, you know, see the qualities, like how many bubbles and what's happening with it. And then I can taste it. Then I can pay attention to the taste. Then I can pay attention to the sensation it creates as it goes down my throat, like that. I can follow up all that sensation, which will develop, again, that awareness of what's happening in my body, awareness of what I'm actually drinking. And interestingly, they found that overweight people don't have this experience. They are cut off from the sensations of that experience. That makes you overeat because you're not really actually experiencing it. If you're experiencing it, it's more of an enjoyable thing. And also you're aware of how much you're consuming when you're consuming. So it's also used as a weight loss practice, that mindful eating. So you can turn real life activities into that, and also like put it into your work day. It's great to do like a 2 minute before meetings, and I encourage people to do it like at the start of their meetings as a team, the internal meetings. That just doing 2 minutes sets our mind to work in a completely different way. So yeah, meditation can be incorporated to our regular daily life. It doesn't have to be necessarily sitting.
That's actually a good idea. Maybe I should try that because I do know that when I I do better when I'm on a phone call talking to someone than than yeah, than most things actually. Because like especially when when I'm on the phone call, lying in bed, looking up at the ceiling and it's dark, I actually do the best because I just focus on the conversation.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, like it's better than during the day. It's better. Yeah, it's way better than during the day
So
where I can walk
whatever
around
we're
and do other
doing, it seems like when we are mindful with it, we enjoy it more, even if
things.
it's washing dishes.
Mhm.
Right? If you're washing dishes, if you can use washing dishes as a form of meditation, mindfulness meditation. How do you do that? Pay attention to the temperature of water when it touches your hand, right? Like the bubbles that creates it. It can be almost like this spiritual sacred practice if you do it that way. And that's your
Mm.
meditation practice. You don't need extra time for that. And guess what? When you do it that way, you enjoy it more.
Mm.
So I used to do these workshops, and I would ask people to listen to this 8 minute long song uh, from George Moroder, and it seems like very repetitive, right? And they would get very agitated because this is a workshop. Like I have 60 people sitting in front of me. And I was like, okay, we're going to start by listening to music. And listening to music for people in that kind of a context is something background, right? And I asked them to sit down and do nothing and just listen to the 8 minutes of music. And they would be like, this is hard. Um, and I would do the mindfulness kind of workshop I do, and at the end I would play it again. This time they paid attention a completely different way, and they really enjoyed it. And most of them would come to me and ask for that song because it
Right.
would put them to that. So the first experience was always like, I need to be doing something more. When we're not paying attention, we're bored, we're agitated, we want to do something else. But if you're fully paying attention, it's a very fulfilling experience. It's a completely different ballgame. So our life quality can be improved just by paying attention to what we are doing, let alone obviously our relationships, right?
Right. Right. Yeah, that's incredibly important. We should never forget about that. Okay, I see. And then I probably say like I think we talked about one of the biggest misconceptions about meditation is that it doesn't take years. It'll take just weeks, so long as you're consistent with it.
Yeah, you're gonna have I think immediate benefits, even at the beginning, if you do it like for a few weeks. Um, and sometimes, again, you may have benefit just doing it, may feel really, really good. But
Hmm.
it's not necessary. If you're not feeling really good, it's not because there's anything wrong going on. Sometimes you're going to enjoy it, sometimes you're not going to enjoy it. And sometimes you're going to be in
Hmm.
a good place for doing it, sometimes you're not going to be doing it. But, if you want to kind of change your life fundamentally through changing your brain fundamentally and improve your abilities emotionally, cognitively, socially, then this is the best way to do it. And it works. There's so much research right now that supports this. Besides the thousands years of practices of humanity, look at every spiritual tradition of earth. They have a form of meditation.
Hmm.
It's like
Yeah,
we think about wisdom, but it's not every single tradition has a way of meditating and mental training.
yeah, that's fair. And yeah, yeah, I think the idea is that people just want to be able to scientifically or quantify it, but it seems that that's the I mean, now that it's come to a point where we can do that, I mean, now we have a lot of literature, so it's kind of
We
back
do,
up.
and we have the brain scans too, right? Like we see that functional and organizational change in the brain, change in the brain matter. It's not just our subjective feelings about it. It changes our brain on a physical level when we
Hmm.
do this. This is powerful. Our ability to rewire our brain, change our brain, is an amazing ability. And if we can, we should. Why would we not? Because brain determines everything about us, right? And the nervous system. If we can get the best out of our brain and nervous system, it will improve everything about our life, how we go through life, what we can achieve in life. And to me, it's kind of crazy that this is pushed away. And it's more about for people, like for spiritual practices, rather than people want to successful. I feel like people who really cares about success should care about this a lot, right? Yes, you should care about this if you want to improve your emotional well-being, but I also think this is crucial for success.